I've written prior and spoken about prior, and many others have as well. Addressing double standards in international fair is really a vital foundation here for stopping the war in Gaza and its now regional escalation to the degree that it's already taken place. Ensuring a greater sense of fairness and willingness to respect principles of our rules-based order really lies at the core of achieving peace in the Middle East, I would argue, and more globally. We do need to be extremely concerned about the escalation of tensions between Iran and Israel. The rising tensions are already further internationalizing the war and unraveling what was a growing international consensus about the nature of the war on Gaza, Israel's war on Gaza, and especially the urgency of a ceasefire moving towards a more permanent solution and the immediate need to vastly upscale humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. So the most devastating and immediate repercussions of these tensions are indeed that now more harm will come to the Palestinians. Iran's attack on Israel has turned northern global diplomatic and military support back towards Israel. And this, of course, has really served to just distract world attention from the military attacks on Rafah, the ongoing famine, and the rising unrest and settler attacks in the West Bank, and towards the escalation of the war in the region. So the rising military support will undoubtedly also have implications for further fueling and sustaining Israel's attacks on Gaza. Israel's attack on the Iranian consulate in Syria, killing members of its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, including a commander, followed yesterday by Iran's missile and drone attacks on Israel, now reflect an counterattack scenario. And while there was very little damage achieved by Iran in the attacks on Israel, and this occurred given that most of the incoming drones and missiles were actually shot down with the help of the United States, the UK, and Jordan. So all in all, a great success for deterrence. Iran's leaders and citizens were very pleased with the attack and have suggested that the matter has been concluded. Israel, however, has threatened that there will be a significant response, and its war cabinet has been meeting to explore options. So Iran has counter-threatened, stating that if Israel responds, the next operation will be much bigger, and that if the US gets involved, it has said that its bases in the region will not be safe. Iran has also expressed the concern that there wasn't enough global condemnation of Israel's attack, which not on a military base, as Israel had suggested, but on an embassy. And this is certainly not the first time Israel has attacked Iranian positions, notably in Syria. And Iran has argued that it has the right to self-defense under the Vienna Convention and deliberately took what it considered to be proportional measures in response to this attack. Despite the escalations that have already taken place, I would argue probably not, that the stakes are simply just too high for each party to escalate further on this particular front, at least. Of course, there's Lebanon and other fronts that we need to be concerned about. The US has reinforced repeatedly its ironclad support for Israel. So that is, a concern for greater escalation. While it has clearly stated it will defend Israel, however, and which it did yesterday in support of in helping to defend the attacks from Iran, it has also stated that it will not participate in an offense against Iran, an offensive attack. So I don't see the US having appetite for participating in an escalation here, particularly in an election year where Americans really want more of a domestic presidential focus. And the US has repeatedly said that it wants to avoid a war with Iran and a regional war, and it has in fact pressured Israel to back down from this escalation. That said, it could clearly find itself in a conundrum if Israel does in fact respond with further escalation, and if Iran also retaliates, given its ironclad support for Israel. In the wider world, other northern powers such as UK, Canada, many Europeans have been supporting Israel and condemning Iran's attack. And the US has called for a meeting with the G7 later today, but I imagine they are likely to also call for de-escalation. And the UN Secretary General has certainly called for an immediate cessation of hostilities And the UN Security Council is in fact meeting today, having an emergency meeting, but China and Russia are likely to back Iran, and a collective multilateral action will be unlikely. So just in conclusion, as I've written prior and spoken about prior, and many others have as well, addressing double standards in international fair is really a vital foundation here for stopping the war in Gaza and its now regional escalation to the degree that it's already taken place. Ensuring a greater sense of fairness and willingness to respect principles of our rules-based order really lies at the core of achieving peace in the Middle East, I would argue, and more globally.